we're gonna do today is actually get the engine ready for the EK. You guys know I've had this GSR engine sitting in the corner of my garage for a good amount of time now. That's what we're gonna put in the EK because it's a direct swap in there, and I think it's gonna be the quickest, most efficient way to get that car on the road. Also, I just think it's cool because I can do kind of a EM1 replica type of deal. Over here, we have the GSR swap. And the engine in the car is basically the same years, if I'm thinking correctly. The ECU should plug right in. Everything should plug right in. It should be a pretty direct swap. I haven't actually looked at this engine in a while. I do plan on doing a water pump and timing belt because I don't know when the last time that was done. It had lower compression on one cylinder than the others, but it may just need a valve adjustment because it was like 120 PSI versus the rest were right up around like 180 PSI, which in my experience, 180 PSI is pretty much normal. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and wash the engine off, get it nice and clean, and then we'll tear into the timing belt and water pump, get that all taken care of. I did actually drive the GSR Integra before I removed the engine, which helps a lot for me. I am gonna end up going ahead and removing the GSR style intake manifold and doing an LS style or like a Skunk 2 knockoff style intake manifold. Because they're cheap, I don't wanna deal with the butterflies that's inside the GSR intake manifold. And I think it fits in the car better. I just like that intake manifold better, so I'm gonna go with that. So this is what it looks like on the inside of that butterfly manifold. Basically these open up at a certain PSI in the intake manifold. Looks like you get more runners on the bottom. I've never used this intake manifold. I've always just changed them out, just like I'm gonna do this time. But I still think it's pretty interesting how it works. I feel like it was kind of ahead of its time. I don't know. You don't really see that anymore on anything or since that. So, kind of cool. Got this all off. Had to take this. Oh, look. Pretty much coming off okay. Anyway, got that all off. Things are looking a lot better. Man, there's a lot of vacuum hoses that go with that style of intake manifold. A lot of those I get rid of. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably just remove this wiring harness just to get it out of the way for now. Okay, so there's the wiring harness. Got that all off. And this wiring harness is in pretty good shape. What I might do just to see how the quality is order one of those Chinese made harnesses from eBay for OBD2. I think this is A. And see if that works out and just track back the wires. I know Young Static and also a few other YouTubers have used those with pretty good success. So I'd like to try them. I actually have one on the EF and it's working great. So this is where we're at. We got all the holes on the intake manifold side covered up with Gorilla Tape, as well as the starter hole because I took the starter off. I think I used the starter on the EF just to see if the EF starter was bad whenever I was doing that. So I'll have to get another starter. I have a bunch of starters in my storage though. Then I got the exhaust manifold all covered up as well. I have all spark plugs in here, so it should prevent any water from getting into the head. Also, I'm not really gonna spray too much on this because I have a brand new valve cover for this when I'm ready for it. So she's no show car, but man, it came really clean. I mean, came cleaner than I thought it was going to. Like I said, it's no show car. But that's good enough for me. I'm not gonna paint the block or anything either. I just like to go raw metal. Some people like to paint the block, and I get that. I just don't want to deal with the flaking paint later on. So I'd rather it be a little dirty and raw metal than me have to deal with any sort of peeling paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the transmission off of this and the cover for the water pump timing belt. And that way we can do just some maintenance items while we have it out. It's much easier. Okay, now with the GSR on the engine stand, we can get going on the maintenance on this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the valve cover, the timing belt cover, the crank pulley, and remember you wanna keep track of that pin, and then we should have pretty good access to the timing belt at that point. So it hasn't been changed before. I don't know if the timing belt's been changed or what, but this valve cover's been off before. Because this isn't factory. Seals for the spark plugs aren't factory either. Moment of truth. If you know, you know. Hell yeah. Don't lose your pin. We have now a full view of the timing belt, which is nice. You gotta make sure you keep track of all the stuff. Like I said, this has been got into before up here. I don't know what for, but it's pretty dirty. This engine is pretty dirty. I don't really think that it's been that well taken care of. I bought this whole car from a friend of mine that I used to work with. It never had much maintenance done to it. It doesn't look like, but I was hopeful that when I got inside, things would look clean, but it doesn't look clean. It actually looks pretty dirty. I'm gonna go ahead and still run it because I think it's probably fine, but I'm glad I'm doing the timing belt and water pump now. So as it turns out, when I put the engine on the engine stand, it's too close to the flywheel to be able to put the engine at top dead center. which sucks, but I think I can work around that. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the tensioner, the timing belt, the water pump, and then I'll deal with putting it in top dead center at the crank area when I'm done with that, and I'm ready to put on the other stuff. So the belt doesn't look bad. It is a genuine Honda timing belt though, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that probably it's never been changed. Just another reason why it's a good thing that we're doing that right now. So this bolt right here, you want to make sure that you get right back in the same spot, because if you use a different length of tensioner bolt, you won't be able to tighten the tensioner down if it's too long, so the belt will never actually stay tight. Speed Academy taught me that. Alright, got all the bolts out for the water pump. As you can see, it's basically coming off already. This is, I think, a factory water pump as well, so I'm pretty sure this has never ever been done. Whenever you take these bolts out, you got to keep in mind that they're not all the same length, so some of them are going to go back in differently than others. What I'm doing now is just cleaning off the residue from the old water pump so that it gets a good, nice seal. There's nothing worse than doing this job and then having to do it again because you didn't clean off an edge that needs to be clean in order to have a good seal. All right, this is the new water pump, Gates water pump, and it actually is a Gates water pump. I mean, they've always been fine for me. I know a lot of people want to use factory Honda pumps, and that's their choice. I use the Gates stuff because the Gates stuff has never been a problem for me, and you guys can roast me about that in the comments below if you want. Got the lower cover back on, putting the crank pulley back on. Got to make sure we get our keyway there. And I'll put on the screen what the torque spec for this is, so that you guys have that. So this is not a Skunk 2 intake manifold, it's a knockoff, but they've been doing them for so long that they're actually pretty decent in my opinion. Yeah, I know that the craftsmanship isn't the greatest and there may be some blemishes in the actual aluminum itself, but as far as function goes, they do function pretty well. What is pretty interesting though, is that in the box, they give you all of the Skunk 2 labeled stuff, even the sticker, which is kind of wild. I have no idea how they can do that and get away with that in the United States, but I'm glad that the intake manifold's available. I do find it a little strange that they can give you all the Skunk 2 pamphlets and stuff that comes in the box, and that's legal. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the intake manifold gasket on here, which is a good old-fashioned Fel-Pro gasket. I've used a million of them and they always work just fine, so I'm going with that again. All right, so we got all the 12mm bolts all on. You definitely want to make sure that you get them all tight, because if you don't, you'll have surging problems and you won't be able to find it. It'll be just like a vacuum leak on your intake manifold. So make sure that all of those are tight. And then also make sure that when you get these cheaper intakes, there's gonna be like leftover aluminum from probably the mold that you wanna go around and remove from all the holes and all that, just so you don't have any problems on the engine. We have a new clutch to install, and I just went with a clutch max because this car's not gonna see any track time or super heavy driving, and I have the same clutch in my EF and it's been holding up just fine. And just like every other clutch kit, this one also comes with the same stuff. Throttle bearing, pilot bearing, alignment tool, clutch, pressure plate, it's all there. It kind of works just like a factory clutch does, maybe not as reliable, but I'm gonna go ahead and grease this ball up really good. All right, so we got the transmission mounted back to the engine with the new clutch in there. I took all the flywheel bolts out because I had to change out the pilot bearing. And so we got a new pilot bearing as well. I got the new intake manifold on there. I don't have a throttle body yet. I think I'm gonna have to use an LS throttle body or an aftermarket throttle body of some type, which is fine. I'm okay with that. I did rob the thermostat off of this engine for the EF a long time ago, so I'm gonna have to get a thermostat housing for this engine. This is the wiring harness that came off of this engine out of the GSR. And we're not going to be using this. We're actually going to be using a harness out of the D series. So the harness that came out of that actual chassis is the one we're going to end up putting back on here. We're going to have to probably extend some wires, which is not a big deal. We can do that. But it will plug into the chassis without any problems, when this one actually won't plug into the chassis at all. One of the things we have to do on the chassis side of things is remove this mount right here, which is 3 14mm bolts, and replace it with this chassis mount right here. So my goal for now is just to get the engine hanging in the car. That way I can start hooking everything up. Okay, so the progress I made today is pretty good. I need to get a 99-2000 rear T-bracket because the DC Integra one won't work. So that's what I'm waiting for back there. But I did get it hung in the engine bay tonight. Ran out of daylight, as you can tell. But the bushings I put in here that are 1320 fit just fine. And guys, these are eBay mounts with 1320 inserts for like 60A, 65A, somewhere in there. Something pretty mellow. So that was pretty good progress for today. Got the engine in the car, got it, a lot of it assembled. We still got to put the starter on, the rear T-bracket on, a lot of the accessories, the wiring harness, all of that. I mean, there's still a long ways to go, but the car is actually getting done at this point. We're making good progress. You know, getting the engine in the car is a huge motivator for me, because now all I have to do is hook everything up, and the end for the mechanical part is definitely in sight. And then after that, we gotta conquer some paint. So, and I got a new project, which if you follow me on Instagram, you know what it is. But if you don't, stay tuned, because it's gonna be a good time.